Hey, good morning. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to meet with you today in person. I ended up having to take a kid to the doctor this morning, and so that took me out of play. So I apologize for that, but want to go ahead and move into this chapter on illicit drug use. You'll remember last week, or I guess on Tuesday, we were talking about alcohol abuse, and I mentioned that alcohol abuse is certainly a drug, or alcohol is certainly a drug. So that chapter naturally folds into this one, right? A drug is any chemical substance that can be ingested, injected, sniffed, swallowed, snorted, or consumed in any other way and causes recognizable physical or psychological effects. Now, that's the definition of a drug, but one of the things that obviously we're looking at is use of illegal drugs. And we've got to acknowledge that is largely a social construct, right? So marijuana used to be a big, nasty, bad drug, and now it's something that, depending on the jurisdiction you're in, is perfectly legal, right? Heroin the same way, you know, really bad stuff, but then up in Oregon, all of a sudden it's legal. So there is a social construct to it all. Anytime you're dealing with drugs, whether it's alcohol or something else, what we've been whether it's alcohol or something else, we are looking at addiction. That's the big issue, and that is a psychological dependence on a substance. So that's the first piece that's at play in addiction, is that psychological or physiological dependence on a substance. There is a psychological dependence on it as well, where you've kind of tricked yourself into thinking that you need it, but true addiction is a physiological dependence. And if you withdraw from, if you don't take that drug, you experience physiological withdrawal syndromes or abstinence syndromes. The addicted person experiences pronounced distress when the addictive substance is not available. So there's that. Addiction involves two intertwined processes, dependence and tolerance, right? So dependence results from the physical effects produced by the substance that are sustained only with its continual use, right? So you become dependent in order to maintain your physiological status. You become dependent on the drug. Tolerance is a need for markedly increased amounts of the substance in order to achieve the intoxication level or the desired effect. The best example I could give you, the easiest example, would be cocaine, right? One of the ways they talk about cocaine is that every subsequent use of cocaine by a person is an effort to achieve or to get back that initial high, right? You can never get quite as high from cocaine as you can that first time, so you need more and more and more of it until you get to a point where it just consumes your life, if not your finances as well. Actually, it consumes your finances, if not your life as well. So let's talk about illicit drug use around the world. In 2018, 275 million people between the ages of 15 and 64 have stated they had used illicit drugs in the last year. 1 in 9 persons who use illicit drugs are dependent on the drug, even when its use results in harm to them. Drugs are a weird thing. I mean, they keep people coming back even when there are clearly negative effects that are going on, right? I mean, we've all seen those pictures of people, before and after meth, and none of us want to be that after picture, but neither did the people in the picture. Still, meth is used all the time. People can see those negative effects, but the draw of meth is that addiction piece is so powerful that it just overcomes everything. Cannabis or marijuana is the most commonly used illicit drug worldwide. 3.9% of the global population uses cannabis in some form. There are about 34.3 million opioid users worldwide, including those who use medically prescribed opioids for other reasons. That being said, a lot of illicit opioid use is misuse of legally prescribed drugs. Marijuana is the most commonly used drugs. Prescription drugs, pain relievers, tranquilizers, stimulants, and sedatives used for non-medical purposes. Let's see here. For non-medical purposes, cocaine, hallucinogens such as ecstasy or LSD, and methamphetamine are also used throughout the United States. Drug use is highest among persons in their late teens, early 20s. Again, this kind of follows that same pattern as alcohol. You have some people who are obviously going to get into it and stay into it for the duration, right, for as long as they can last. But you also have people who use it early on, late teens, early 20s, and then as they develop more and more responsibility, they, their use falls off just because they have jobs, they have other things. Fatal drug overdoses have reached epidemic levels in the United States since 1999. There have been 3 distinct waves of drug overdose deaths. In the late 1990s, misinformation given to medical doctors that opioids were not addictive and could be safely prescribed for pain management led to a major wave. In 2010, widespread use of heroin caused those second wave. And then 2013, the most deadly wave, synthetic opioids such as fentanyl began to be used in combination with heroin, counterfeit pills, and cocaine. Fentanyl is crazy. There was a drug bust down in Texas probably 2-3 weeks ago where the amount of fentanyl seized was enough, if taken in the right ways, it was enough to kill literally every person in the United States. Obviously it's going to be cut down, and diluted, but in that original form, just crazy. It's just such a incredibly potent drug. So let's see here. Where are we at? Fentanyl, heroin, counterfeit pills, cocaine. Between 4 and 6% of persons who use opioid pain medications become heroin users. That's because you get addicted to that pain medication. And I will say, I'm someone who, I remember I was in the hospital. I was injured when I was in junior high, and was on morphine for a little while. And I'm telling you, I'm 43 years old, and I still remember how good that morphine felt. I have no desire to ever try that again because it was so nice. And once you run out of the legal stuff that's medically prescribed, if there's a illegal alternative and you can have access to it, then you're likely to get after it. Most deaths from overdoses happen in West Virginia, Ohio, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania. Not really sure why in that really tight area. Ohio, it's just devastating, just absolutely devastating what's going on there. Alcohol misuse accounts for more than twice the number of persons with substance abuse than any other illicit drug. As far as races and how that works, let's see here. Illicit drug use among American Indians and Alaska Natives is about 15%. African Americans is about 14% of the population. Hispanic or Latinos, 8.9%. Lowest use is among Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and other Pacific Islanders. I'm obviously going off the book's notes here. I'm not sure why there's no stats for Caucasians. Obviously, that's going to account for the bulk of it, just in the sheer numbers. The bulk of the illicit drug use is going to be by Caucasians. So I'm not sure why that number's not in there. So I apologize for that. LGBT community. The social stigma associated with minority status is chronically stressful and exposes minorities to illegal drug use. There's a lot of things that are stressful. Stress doesn't make you turn to drugs, right? Obviously, it does for some people, but there's a lot of people who deal with stress without drugs. Persons identifying themselves as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender are twice as likely to use illicit drugs or to misuse prescription drugs as heterosexuals. More than 30% LGBT persons use marijuana compared to 12.9% of heterosexuals. Let's see here. American Indians, Native Alaskans, compared to illicit drug users in the general population, the percent of users among American Indians and Alaska Natives is considerably higher and exceeds that for African Americans. American Indian youths who live on reservations and attend school on or near a reservation are more prone to illicit drugs than their peers across the nation. As far as college students, talking about you guys, widespread intoxication and its often dire consequences are common occurrences on campuses across the country. As much as people want to complain about various things, not common here. That's a pretty big positive. Other than the use of marijuana and amphetamines, college drug use is lower than their peers who do not attend college. Another way of saying that is those who attend college are more likely to use marijuana or amphetamines. But that kind of makes sense when we go with the whole, you have responsibilities, things that are required of you. So let's see here. Drugs such as inhalants, heroin with a needle, Vicodin, methamphetamines, crystal methamphetamine, bath salts, a sedative, and sedatives are 2 or more times higher among persons who do not attend college. Amphetamines, specifically Adderall, we talked about this in class. Adderall use among college students is at almost 10%, is markedly higher than their non-college peers. There's a few reasons for that. One is there's this thought that Adderall will help you focus during studying, which has not been shown to happen at all. And it'll keep you awake. And then when you mix it with alcohol, people say that it increases the buzz of alcohol. It can also cause some pretty significant medical issues as well. But but that's not really talked about a whole lot. The prevalence of male illicit drug use tends to be higher than female use for both college students and their non-college peers. Hallucinogen is markedly higher among males, while Vicodin and OxyContin are more used by females. So that is that. I'm just looking through what we got here. Obviously, there's a few different reasons why people say drug use is as bad as it is. Cloward Nolan identify 3 subcultural opportunity structures: criminal, violent, and retreatist. We've seen this with alcohol as well. Retreatist structure or subculture, sorry. The opportunities for financial gain from criminal activities are not available, and social status cannot be achieved by violent means. Participants are provided access to illicit drugs, socialized into their use, and protected from detection by legal authorities. A lot of this stuff is going to be the exact same as we talked about with alcohol, right? You have anomy theory where people don't feel like, they're given the goals that society lays out, and they don't feel like there's any realistic opportunity for them to achieve those goals. And so they go after those goals by other means, drugs being one of them. Let's see here. Self-Derogation Theory. Being derogatory about yourself makes you more prone to deviate from the norms of conventional society. Negative self-attitudes result from the perception social devaluation, that you aren't worth much from a social perspective, and a persistent source of stress for an individual. Drugs allow you to escape that thought process. Social strain, you've got all these, stressful things, negative things that are going on in your life, and drugs, mood altering drugs specifically, allow you a short-term respite for the negative emotional state and interpersonal problems that you may have. Let's see here. This is interesting. Howard Becker's study on becoming a marijuana user, an analysis of the process of learning to use marijuana and learning to associate its effects with a sense of pleasure. There are 3 stages in the process. The first, learning the technique. This is where a novice smoker must be taught the techniques necessary to achieve a high. And, this is the same as where people will, when they're learning to smoke a cigarette, will swallow the air versus inhale it and stuff like that. So they're being taught how to smoke, learning to perceive the effects. Once the novice user is able to experience the effects of marijuana, they must learn to recognize the symptoms of being high and associate those symptoms with the use of marijuana, and then learning to enjoy that high. Sometimes it freaks people out. So sometimes they've got to be taught to enjoy it, right? The effects of marijuana tend to involve a mix of sensations, some pleasurable, some not. And so they have to be able to differentiate the bad effects from the desirable ones. As experience with marijuana increases, so too does their ability to control its deleterious effects, the ability to control the crappy effects of it. And then there's just obviously self-control, right? Once people experience something good or see other people experiencing something they perceive as good, they go after it themselves. So much of this stuff is the exact same thought process that we looked at when we were looking at alcohol abuse. And so there's nothing really new in that. I wanted to go over the drug stats with you. I really wanted to get this out to you. Like I told you on Tuesday, these chapters are shorter and shorter as we continue on. We're going to spend some time, maybe a day or two next week, on the next chapter, which is dealing with sexual abuse and things along those lines. And so I want to give you guys a heads up on that. That we'll be dealing with that topic. So come prepared to do that. And that was the main reason why I wanted to go ahead and push through on this. I appreciate y'all understanding when it comes to me not being there this morning. This is going to be a shorter thing to go through, so it works out well for both of us. You just having to watch this short video versus having to go to class. So anyway, I hope y'all are doing well. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday.